Alex Answer here. It is November 12th in the year 2017. It's actually the fifth time I've done a recording on this topic. And I've identified now how to keep outside interference buzzing from other electrical devices out of the recording by, of course, it's a good way to start actually, right? Maintain a good grounding to prevent that interference. The recorder needs a good grounding. And so having it near like my Himalayan salt lamp, which is good for creating negative ions in the air, kind of like at the beach. So, creates a positive vibe. Been doing this more the last month. But it creates a certain amount of interference to the electrical device. Human beings are electrical, but they don't necessarily know it. We're affected by the changes in the sun. We're even affected by other things that impact our Earth's magnetic field. What are those things? Military technologies. What else? Cosmic rays. When do we see more cosmic rays? When we see less solar activity and we go into a solar minimum. When is that? We're going to that period now. We're not quite at the full solar minimum. We've seen a spat of geomagnetic storms. Maybe you've read about it over at spaceweather.com or spaceweather.gov. Maybe you've had dream disturbances, psychic interference, maybe things seem backwards from what you thought was real in the last few days. Maybe your perceptions are altered, and maybe you still haven't gone down the rabbit hole of linking changes in your own psyche and your circadian rhythms with changes in the Earth's magnetic field. What I have in my hand is documentation. That I'm not the only person to speak about this. There's another person that's documented even the scientific, I'm going to read something to you now, studies that have been reported on, like New Scientist magazine, for example, on the links between psychiatric admissions and geomagnetic storms. So what I want you to know is we can make this a positive through exercise and meditation, spiritual growth. For me, I'm doing a lot of videos. I'm doing a lot of these videos after the solar flares and the geomagnetic storm, although we're still in the feeling the solar rain. And I'm choosing to apply this energy towards outputting. I also get distracted, easily. So sometimes I don't get back to emails. Sometimes I don't get involved in certain dramas or other people's interests. And I don't respond to the news wire. Just because something happened that day doesn't mean I have to respond to it. Right now I'm at a phase, and especially thank you to those that have donated to my work. You know who you are, past and present. You make it possible for me to focus on what I believe to be the truth, and a truth that can help a lot of us. And right now we need to weather the storm, the emotional storm that is upon us, and that includes the manufactured events. And sometimes they target certain people on the planet as a part of their blood sacrifice. And what a lot of people don't understand that sometimes get involved in conspiracy stuff is they leave out the reality of it's bigger than 9911223, their numerological codes they're trying to break. They really do plan certain events and wars during solar cycles. And there is a history of people like Alexander Chavinsky, who in 1918 discovered the causal factors between geomagnetic storms and battles breaking out. And in 1942, years after he discovered these things, the Russian government had him locked away. The question is, why was he locked away? And the question is, why do so many people scoff at these studies? Because this is not New Age. This is chronobiology. We are impacted in the sun in more ways than us getting up when the sun comes out. On a hormonal level, hell, I would love to meet a scientist who was into this information. Donate my body to science, not for it to be cut up or anything, but to, have my testosterone levels measured, for example, during geomagnetic storms, other elements of my physiology that can be actually measured by science. Heart rates, sleep rates, how deep I go into a sleep, and the effects after the geomagnetic storm, because when we have the effects before, kind of like the waning and the waxing of the moon, something people have far more knowledge of, but not as much knowledge of how we are affected by the waning and the waxing of the geomagnetic storms of the sun, how it affects just all around, all elements. So someone's kind of in a dark space, say involved in self-abuse or abusing others, they're going to be doing more of it. If someone is involved in spiritual work or helping others, they're going to be doing more of that or inner work. So it's definitely not a matter of blaming the sun, but noting that the sun is a conduit for increasing the activity that is basically already taking place in the population or in the human being. So let's read now from the book. A recent study that was published in New Scientist provides precise data on the correlation between solar storms and health. In a particular article, the director of the Russian Institute for Industrial Ecology reports that, quote, investigations of geomagnetic fields were conducted between 1948 and 1997. Contrary to expectations, the data showed that there was a significant increase in mood swings and suicides. And I'll talk about why I think that is in a moment, when the strength of the geomagnetic fields were most intense. That is coming from emotions out of balance. That can be mediated by someone being aware of why their emotions are in flux, why their perceptions are changing, especially with those with psychic abilities. And some people don't know that they're sensitive. And some people know that they're sensitive but don't know anything about the solar flares. So they can find their whole perceptions turned upside down. And they can even find themselves like feeling like victims. Or they can find themselves under psychic attack. So what do we do with this influx of energy? Again, there's ways to meditate and ground and earth. So everything that you may have read or ways where you know how to access information about grounding or meditations, you want to apply those tools when we go through an influx of this energy. And you want to use those websites like spaceweather.com and spaceweather.gov to know when we as human beings are in flux energetically. See, people have more interest in astrology than this for some reason. And I've always seen that as a distraction that people will, go into. And I'm not saying that it has no impact. We may possess certain dispositions to certain personalities being born at the same time or particular moments in time that can be measured based on the solar radiation and its influence over the personality. But what about those moments in which we're all affected? When you can literally show with statistics, right, that there's more babies being born. Why? There's more people having sex. Why? The hormones, male testosterone. It's going up. That's why in some cases there's more bar fights. There's more ooga booga going on. Ooga booga, ooga booga, ooga jaga, ooga jaga. I'm hooked on a feeling, everybody moving around and making babies and killing each other. It's nature. Hate to tell you that. It doesn't mean that we don't have free will. But when it comes to like certain natural factors and seasons influencing nature, and we're a part of nature, even though we may have souls inside these animal human bodies, absolutely. Humans on an animal level are influenced with regards to periods in which they procreate more and kill each other at faster rates, and in some cases choose to go higher with their energies. Instead of just have a bunch of sex and do a bunch of drugs and kill a bunch of people and do a bunch of rock and roll, nothing wrong with a little rock and roll, some people go higher. And they're activating at a higher level. And some people even describe it as taking the root chakra up to the higher chakra, the higher energies. So away from lust, and away from anger, and away from divide and conquer. Must I say away from fake news? And into intuition, into higher knowledge, within, my tagline for Outside the Box TV for years. I'm Alex Chancery, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth still lies within. So I do believe that as transmitter receivers, human beings, right, with the unique brain cells that we have and how we are impacted by environmental factors and changes within the sun, that we can awaken within to certain knowledge and truth. Others, right, if they're going to be out of balance through abuse of their body, and even for some people living in cities alongside the unnatural energy. So people could be living in cities around computers and cell phones and malls, and they can be driven crazy when those solar flares come in, and their sleep can be interrupted. unless they are in balance. And how can we do that? We increase the amount of exercise. What works for you? We increase the amount of meditation. We try to get above certain issues. We try to have breakthroughs. Reset. Get away from the internet for days. I'm just outputting knowledge right now. I'm not barely getting back to a lot of things and distractions. I'm not reporting on a lot of news. I'm going to be in output mode. And that's what I'm here to do. And that's why I appreciate those that support my work, because it's more important that I focus on these core issues than just responding to what Trump did on his trip in Asia. But that is key. I am going to come back to that. But for now, I just want to really just end this. I'm going to end this now. I'm going to come back to this book because I've done many takes of this. Very long takes. And I had to redo this because of the interference from the electric device. We should use the power of the sun. We can even put our minds together. I believe that. I don't believe that everything that's said about the law of attraction is real by others. But I believe that there's something that they know about the power of thought. That would be the controllers and the propagandas. They'll create a bunch of hate around a particular group because there's negativity feeding on those collective thought forms. But could there be collective positive thought forms? Of course there can. Love for all. When we put our heads together and we love, and we direct consciousness, I don't even, this is a rabbit hole that we can return to. How can the power of human thought be harnessed in a more mindful way? And I'm not saying I'm not going to be the director of that. We're not going to necessarily do any, we're not going to try to, I just know there's got to be something to that because they want to direct us to negative collective thought forms. And I'm not going to say that we could just put our thoughts together and just completely in this matrix. Some things are just beyond. But can we do some things on a more positive level when that energy is there that we haven't even begun to consider? That's what I'm getting at, right? So are there certain movements and periods in which we can do something positive for ourselves and the world when the field is more active? Right now, let's find out on the microcosmic level what we can do on the individual path. What is it that I look at? I look at overcoming writer's block and beginning the task of writing my story. I look at making more videos where I speak from the heart and I don't hold back in areas in which I don't think are safe from YouTube or for the YouTube audience. And I think I need to get back to talking about certain geopolitical realities, certain topics that are just near censored by YouTube. That's for the on-demand side. And I seek to use basically this period as inspiration, to just push forward with what it is that I do. But as far as what other people do and waking the world up, that's on them. I'm an individual. I need to be empowered, not be a victim. So that means more exercise. That means spending a little bit more time grounding to the earth and resolving long-standing emotional issues that are there to be resolved. So we need to use these moments where we have an increase in geomagnetic activity and can learn more at spaceweather.com and gov about when we have an increase in space weather. But I would say this is the time to connect us with spirit and go within to do a lot of work that needs to be done.